Hey guys, it's Charlie. I own a clothing brand in the UK called Frost, and this channel is just all about dropping free game. And today we're going to go over probably one of the biggest buzzwords when starting a clothing brand, which is what is GSM. A lot of people confuse GSM, but it's actually just a really simple unit of measure. That's all it is a unit of measure. And this video is going to clear up everything you need to know about GSM. The definition of GSM is grams per square meter. So that is just a 1 meter square slice of fabric weighed on a scale in grams. That's all it is. The one thing people skew with GSM is GSM does not equal luxury. The higher the GSM, not the better garment it is. It just means it's heavier. Heavier doesn't always mean better because you're not taking into account other parts of the process of making a fabric, such as yarn count, type of weave, fabric composition. All of that builds quality, not just GSM. Now, GSM is used for probably 90% of fabrics. However, ounces are still a common unit of measurement for stuff, say like denim. You've probably heard of 12 ounce, 14 ounce, 16 ounce jeans, but you don't really hear about GSM. GSM does actually correlate to ounces. Like 16 ounce denim is around 540 GSM. But for some reason, people still like ounces for a unit of measurement for, say, cotton canvas or denim products. You don't really need to know why. I don't know why, and I don't really care why. I just use exactly what everyone else knows so I can get exactly what I want out of my tech pack. Now, the easiest way to show GSM is probably taking household garments everyone knows, say like a t-shirt, and just comparing where they'd be on a scale. So a lightweight t-shirt is going to be 100 or 150 GSM. That's going to be the ones where you get wet and you can see right through, or maybe you don't even need to get wet to see right through. Midweight is 150 to 180 GSM, so it might still be a little bit see-through, but it's probably what you're going to be finding in the likes of Uniqlo, Zara, Pull and Bear, stuff like that. All the high street brands, Bershka, usually their t-shirts are midweight. And then we go on to heavyweight. Heavyweight is anything over 180 GSM. On here, it actually says 240 plus. My t-shirts for my brand Frost are 305. I wouldn't go anything higher than 305 because then it starts getting into hoodie territory and it's just really uncomfortable. But the reason people have different GSMs and everyone just doesn't use one is because of how they want the garment to fit. For my brand, I mainly sell oversized boxy graphic tees, and in order for the t-shirt to be boxy and hold its shape, it needs to be heavier and have more structure to it. That's why I'm not using the 100 GSM fabric, because it's going to look like a dishcloth in the shape of a t-shirt. The hoodie scale is the same as a t-shirt scale, but just higher GSM. Your hoodies are always thicker than your t-shirts, and that's how it should be. A lightweight hoodie basically starts where a heavyweight t-shirt ends, but then it can get all the way up to, say, 500. I've even seen some brands doing 1000 GSM hoodie, and usually how they do that is by sewing together two 500 GSM fabrics to make it an 1000. There's no machine in the world can actually weave an 1000 GSM fabric, I don't think. But the same rule applies for the GSM in the hoodies. If you want it to have more structure, more shape, you want a higher GSM, or use a poly blend. Now, poly blends look okay. They look pretty nice. You're probably familiar with this scuba sort of material where it looks cloud-like. Now, these will have a lower GSM than a French terry hoodie. However, they'll be thicker. GSM does not always equal thickness. Let's get that out of the way. It's a measure of weight by density, not by thickness. And just for reference, here is everything on a bar chart, just so you can visually see where stuff are in terms of GSM when compared to each other. Some household stuff like jeans, hoodies, t-shirts, it's just easier to visualize. But as I've touched on in this video, GSM does not tell you the whole story, because GSM does not equal quality. You need to take in every other aspect of making the fabric rather than just the weight. You need the yarn count, the method, combed versus carded, knit, because two tees could both be 180 GSM, but one could be worth 3 times more than the other because of how it's actually made and not just taking the buzzword figure. And as I touched on before, GSM does not equal thickness. You're probably right to assume the higher the GSM, the thicker it will go if you're comparing the same type of fabric all the time. But if you've got two different blends of fabric, say brush poly blend fleece, that's going to be thicker than 100% French terry cotton at 450 GSM. Even though the GSM is 100 different, the 350 is going to be thicker because of the polyester, which gives it that cloud-like look. So when you're making your tech packs, you need to put the fabric composition in. You need to know what you're asking for. Otherwise, the manufacturer is going to have your pants down and give you something a little bit cheaper for them, but still charge you the same price. And leading on from that point, you can't just ask, oh, I want a heavyweight hoodie. You need to tell them what GSM, what fabric, because someone's interpretation of heavyweight is completely different. The word's up for debate because the supplier might think 200 GSM's heavy, but I don't think it's heavy. For a t-shirt, anything over 300's heavy. And now that you know what GSM actually is, there is a couple of points you need to look out for. And the first one is spec tolerance. Now, if I've got a 450 GSM fabric and we make 2 hoodies with it, one hoodie's garment washed, one hoodie isn't garment washed. The one that's garment washed is not going to be 450 GSM anymore because it's going to shrink and hold water. Now, because it's shrunk and more dense, it's going to weigh more than the 450 GSM. Even though they're both made out of the same fabric, that one's going to be heavier. So if your manufacturer says, oh, we don't have a 500 GSM fabric for this hoodie, we can't wash it, we can do a 450. The 450 won't actually be 450 after it's washed. It will be closer to 500. So be picky on the fabric you want, but don't be too picky. Tip number 2 is just weigh it yourself. You can get these cutters off Amazon and they're literally 1 meter squared exactly. You take a little tester, you put it on a scale, and you can know the exact weight. The only downside to this is you have to waste a garment, unless your manufacturer has some spare fabric and they send it you, which I would ask them to do. If you don't ask, you don't get. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, my brand sells 305 GSM 100% cotton boxy graphic t-shirts, and this slide is exactly why. The type of print you use on your garment is directly correlated to the GSM. Screen print you can pretty much do on any fabric. DTG you can pretty much do on any cotton based fabric, but the likes of puff print and embroidery, it needs to be over a certain thickness, and to be honest, I'd probably put them even thicker than they've got on here. Puff print obviously does what it says on the tin. It's screen print, you put it on heat, it puffs up. You might be familiar with it with CPFM and Broken Planet. They're probably the 2 main brands who are known for this, but you can't really have it on a light t-shirt because it's actually going to weigh the t-shirt down. The print will be heavier than the t-shirt, so it's just going to look like a bag of crap. But if you put it on a heavier garment, say over 300 GSM, it's going to look a lot better because it's not going to be weighing the garment down and breaking down its structure. That's why their examples look good, because it's not on anything thin. And embroidery is exactly the same. Embroidery on a thin t-shirt looks so tacky, it's unbelievable, because the embroidery is actually denser than the t-shirt and just weighs it down again. So you want it on a nice heavy fabric so it actually has something to grip onto, rather than looking like you've just embroidered a paper towel. And the last useful tip before we wrap up this video is the GSM is gonna cost you extra. The fabric will cost more, yes, but the freight and postage is also gonna cost more. But because it weighs more, getting it from your manufacturer to you is gonna cost you more money, because obviously shipment is based on total weight. So your bulk order is gonna be heavier. And then at the same time, once you have it in your warehouse and you ship it to a customer, it's gonna cost more because it weighs more. So make sure you add this into your price and make sure your margins are all right before picking a heavyweight fabric just because you think it's a buzzword. And just to wrap up the video, here is just a list of 6 bullet points of the whole video in 6 lines. GSM isn't that hard to understand. People just overcomplicate it and use it as a buzzword because the consumers are usually undereducated on the matter. And for casual buyers, why would you need to know what GSM is anyway? As long as you know and you know what you're asking for, you won't get fleeced by your manufacturer. So if you did enjoy this video, please make sure you subscribe and like the video, because we do have more free game dropping every single Sunday at 6 PM. And if you've watched me before, you know we always end on a motivational quote, and this week's quote is the following: your next move matters more than your last mistake.